to India and Ireland, round Africa and back again. We don't really need to know just where we'll go. Maybe Canada, then to Brazil, then through the Alpine foothills. All I really want to know is, can we go? Oh baby, can we go? Round and around the globe.
Welcome to Take Me With You, episode 81. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Cheryl. We are two well-traveled people who want to go everywhere.
But that's not going to happen. So instead, we'll travel vicariously by inviting a guest to share their unique travel stories with us.
Today, we're talking to Katie. Katie is a mother of two adorable twin little babies and an awesome middle sister who lives in Shoreline, Washington. Welcome, Katie!
Yay!
Hey, thanks for having me back on.
Yeah,
Of
absolutely. This is Katie's third time on our
Yes.
podcast.
I'm going for the Five Timers Club, so
I'm excited to have you back because I think I maybe said this via email, but I definitely wanted to, I mean, technically this isn't in person either, but more in person, just such a huge thank you for the last time you were on and gave me all of those recommendations for my trip to Disneyland back in February, because it was so helpful. And not just like what you said on the podcast, but you also sent me very, very detailed notes that I actually ended up, no, it was great. You were speaking my language. And what happened was, because I don't know if you listened to any of the episodes and heard that we all got sick and everything.
Oh yeah, I listened to all of that. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was.
Well, I'm glad you're talking about doing a do-over. I'm sorry that happened, and
yes.
I'm really impressed with the amount that you were able to do in the time that you were there. So it sounds like you
some
did.
Of that though was because of the information that you provided, and then also my friend Ingrid, who was able to like text like at the time.
Oh yeah,
but because the day that my sister ended up being sick, all of a sudden I was planning to do Disneyland that whole day, and all of a sudden my sister's like, if you don't go to California Adventure today, you probably aren't going to get to go. So all of a sudden, like, oh, apparently I'm doing a different park today. And so I was not planned for it. I hadn't like thought about it yet. And so being able to pull up your notes and like look at things and go here and do this and look at your recommendations was super, super helpful. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. I'm so glad that was helpful. A lot of that was just pulled from my previous notes from trip planning. But yeah, I always like to think and talk and plan about Disneyland, even if it's not my own trip. So
I do think, Katie, that if you ever get the chance career-wise to be a researcher for like, I don't know if it would be a website or like, I think you would be so good working for the like Stuff You Should Know podcast or different things like that.
Oh my
because
goodness.
you go so deep when you
I
research.
would love that.
And you're like, let me tell you about all aspects ever of this subject. And it's so helpful. And like my personality is kind of the opposite, where I'm like, I want to know a little bit about everything, but I love knowing people like you who will tell me all the answers to things so that I don't have to research it for myself. And so it's really nice. Oh man.
Yeah, it's definitely my jam.
So Katie, since you are such an experienced guest at this point, we're not going to necessarily ask you those same three questions, but we've kind of got a little spin or a different take on them. So first one, as Cheryl mentioned, you are now a mother of twins.
Yes.
And they're how old at this point?
They're 10 months.
10 months. So still not very old at all.
No.
So how has your perspective or thinking or planning around travel changed now that you've got two little babies in your house?
Well, I'm very excited for traveling with them in the future. We have not done any significant travel with them yet. Like if we had like more immediate family out of state, we were gonna travel over Christmas or something, but we didn't do that because all of our closer family is up here. So we were able to stay local. And right now it's a lot of work to even like do a weekend trip that's relatively local where we're going somewhere in, Washington or something like that. We've done those with them, and it's a lot of packing, and yeah. And they're a lot better in the car than they were for the first 6
good.
months. All of a sudden, when they were actually about 5.5 months old, all of a sudden they just stopped freaking out in their car seats, which was awesome. It makes it a lot more pleasant to take them in the car. But yeah, I
Nice.
want to travel with them. I'm not feeling really motivated about right now. I mean, there's multiple reasons why, but I think we're gonna maybe wait till like 2021 to do anything more significant with them. I don't think this
Okay.
is the year of us trying to go and take a big trip with them. And I don't know how big of a trip we'll do in 2021 either, but at least something bigger than we've done before. But we're not quite there yet. It's a lot of prep, and I don't know how. I'm not. We could take them on a plane. It's always possible. I'm not excited about that prospect right now. So yeah,
Can't blame you.
yeah.
And then I'm just going to tack one little bonus question on that's related. What are your plans for baby's first Disney?
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I think it would be cool to take them before they turn 3, because then we'll take advantage of that free under 3 policy where they won't
Okay.
have to be charged park admission. I don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but yeah,
Sure.
sometime before they turn 3. There's some, rumblings and planning that's kind of occurred and hasn't gone, too far yet. But I think will probably happen with family going down together, which
Yeah,
would be
there
awesome,
is.
because then we will have help with the boys and maybe able to get an evening off or something like that too, which would be awesome. So
Oh, that'd be awesome.
yeah. So, and then maybe we could all do like a vacation rental together. And yeah, so I think we'll make it happen sometime before they're 3, but we're not planning anything right now. I mean,
Sure.
again, multiple reasons for that, but yeah.
Yes. Well, and I'm guessing that one of those reasons leads into my second revamped question. We are recording this at the end of April in 2020, and we are all still under stay-at-home orders because of COVID-19. So my second question, which I think we asked a different guest as well, is how has the whole COVID-19 thing affected your perspective on travel?
That's a good question. Yeah, that's definitely affecting lots of people's travel plans. We super lucked out in that we didn't have any travel plans that were affected by this. So just because we weren't doing any significant travel at this time of our lives with babies. But in terms of perspective, I don't know if that's how long-term effect, but I don't really know what the long-term impacts will be. It's really hard to say.
Right.
It definitely makes me think about like travel insurance, but then I don't know if that's what's covered. I know the airlines had policies and about refunds during a certain period of time. Very early on in the kind of COVID-19 being in the States, Nate's family had started talking about it was that time when everyone's like, oh, travel's cheap and they're having all these empty flights.
Yeah.
And so there was that, I think this was early March, I want to say. And so Nate's family was like, should we all go to Hawaii? And then that quickly was like, no, we should absolutely not all go to Hawaii. We should all stay home. So, and then pretty quickly it turned into, we have to stay home. But,
Yeah.
so, but yeah, there was that. So there was a thought at some point of exploiting the circumstances and taking advantage of any kind of discounts we could get, but we can't, obviously that didn't pan out. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say about long-term perspective though, because I just don't know what's going to happen. So, but we'll keep planning trips. I mean, once we kind of feel comfortable, doing that with our little ones. So yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like the timing for that actually worked decently well for you because you were already not planning to go very far anyway.
Yes. Yeah. Travel wise, it worked out really well.
Yeah. So with thinking about travel and the boys, where are some places looking to the future, to when they're kids, not babies, that you're really excited to take them to? Like, what are the big things that you're looking forward to experiencing with travel with your family?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, yeah, taking like beach trips is, pretty low key and fun, I think, with kids. So we'll probably do something like
Mm,
that. Um, I think maybe our first flight with them might be to California. It could be Disneyland or it could be some other trip or some combination. But um, that's a nice short flight. So that would be a
Yeah.
good like trial run of like bringing children on an airplane.
mm,
With babies, like we just weren't excited about it, partially because trying to bring bottles and formula and all that stuff, and then
Yeah.
we with twins, you can't like alternate who's holding one. If you have two adults, you both have to hold one the whole time. So it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't want to do that. You don't get a break for like over 2 hours with one on your lap. They can get real squirmy, but
maybe you
um,
should do the first flight with their grandparents then too, because then you could have 4
that
adults and 2
would be
babies.
lovely, because then we would have help and more laps and all that stuff. So yeah, but what we're excited about, yeah, I mean, aside from Disneyland, um yeah, I think a Hawaii trip could be fun. I love Hawaii. um and you know uh, exploring the Western United States. I honestly haven't spent much time in the Eastern United States, so you know, uh, we'll get out there eventually. But I think starting with things on the west side of the country that we like,
Hmm.
places in the Northwest, a lot of like natural places. We definitely want to take them to like national parks and state parks and things like
Mm,
that. Um, yeah, just try to think, do things that will be their speed at the time. Yeah, and then we don't have anything like lined up necessarily, so we'll kind of have to see
mm,
what strikes us as a good idea for them when we decide to travel.
mm. So, okay, we're going to be talking about some national parks in today's episode, and I am.
Spoilers.
No. And I mean, as of now, I still have a national park family trip booked for this summer. I'm also holding it with
Mm-hmm.
open hands, as I think everyone is with travel plans right
Mm.
now. I
Yeah.
think similar to you, Katie, my timing has been pretty awesome with when all of this COVID-19 stuff started. We didn't have any plane trips booked anywhere. Only like a couple weekend trips, and then this summer we have plans to go to Yosemite with my 6-year-old stepson. And so anyway, but with we're still planning as of now. That's going to happen. We'll see. But I know Katie and I grew up with our family. We went to a fair amount of national parks as kids. We went to Yellowstone, I think twice, like once in elementary school and once in high
Yes.
school, maybe, or something like
Yep.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went to the Redwoods. We went to Crater Lake. I think we did some of the big, like, more
Denali.
west side of the yeah, Denali, yeah, up in
Yeah.
Alaska. And so Ryan, did you go to national parks as a kid?
Yes. National parks, state parks, I never know which is which.
Okay.
We definitely did a lot
Mhm.
more camping when I was younger than as I got older. I think some of that's because it's a cheaper
Yeah, it
way
is.
to
I mean, that's part of
travel,
why
and
I want to take my stepson.
yeah, well, and we
that's
just
a
didn't,
way less
like, when I was a
expensive
lot
way.
younger, we didn't have a ton of money. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not saying we were dirt poor or anything, but we just didn't
You didn't have a
have,
ton of like
money to
vacation
do.
money.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of vacations were like, we went to Crater Lake when I was a kid. We went to Diamond Lake in Oregon. But most of the travel growing up was to visit my grandparents who lived in California. One set lived in San Jose and the other lived in Sacramento. And so we would usually drive. We usually didn't fly. We would drive down, drive partway in Oregon, stay in a motel overnight, and then drive the rest of the way the next day. And then we would be there visiting grandparents. And that was kind of what vacation was for us growing
Mhm.
up most of the time.
Yeah. So I'm curious to think about, as we think about like Katie, you or I taking our kids to a national park, which like to
Yeah.
us as adults, going to a national park is like a pretty amazing thing to see, like these amazing pieces of nature where you're like, this is crazy that this tree is this big, or this geyser is here, or this glacier, whatever it is. Like there are some just glorious things at a national park that we as
Yes.
adults, I think, can really appreciate. And then I think to me, like there's a draw to take a kid there to like get to show him some amazing things in the United States in his childhood, to get him in the outdoors because he loves the
Yes.
outdoors, you know,
Mhm.
things like that. But looking back for you guys, I'm curious to ask you, like, what do you remember actually being significant to you when you saw some of like those types of things? And what do you remember being like, who cares? You know, or like I'm curious, what was that like for each of you?
Well, I think my first national park memory was when our family went to Olympic National Park. Uh, and I think I must have been really young because I have just a couple scattered memories from this. But I do remember being disappointed there wasn't a playground because when I heard national park, I assumed that it was going to be like a really big, good playground. And so I
Yeah,
didn't
sure.
understand that that's not what all parks are. So I must have been like 3 or 4 or something at the time. But by the time we went to Yellowstone, that I think I was like 7. I loved that trip. I thought it was super cool.
Mm,
I loved the geysers and the hot springs and all the animals. Oh, I loved all the animals we got to see. It was a very memorable, cool trip. I have lots of memories from that trip. So Yellowstone, I think, is super fun because there's a lot of different things to see. And so a kid might be more interested in that. And there's some really dramatic stuff.
mm,
Yeah. So yeah, that could be that, that's maybe something that I have in mind myself.
mhm.
That might be more, make a bigger impression or be more interesting for a child. Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Ryan?
I was thinking about it. First of all, I don't think I knew what was a national park and what wasn't. We were just camping, right? You would just
Sure.
camp here, you
Sure.
would camp there,
Yeah.
or whatever. I definitely remember Crater Lake and being super interested and astounded by that. I
Yeah.
must have been in elementary school at that point because I have very distinct memories. I've actually been there twice, but the first time we actually went like hiked down, took the boat out to Wizard Island, got to hike
Oh,
up and around Wizard
cool.
Island. I remember that there was still like a little bit of snow inside, which I thought was really cool because I'm pretty sure it was summer. So it was funny to me to see
snow in
snow in the
summer.
summertime.
Mhm.
Right. And this came up when we did our Redwoods episode a while ago, because I didn't think I had been to the Redwoods. But I think I actually had been, but I didn't realize that that's what it was. Because I remember going camping at once with my grandparents and I think some aunts and uncles and cousins and things. And I remember the trees that had been burned out and you could like go inside the tree because parts of it had been burned out.
Mhm.
Like the tree burns, but like the outside, the bark is left. Well, I didn't realize that those were redwoods, but those were redwoods.
Or
And
like
when I
big
went
trees.
to the redwoods, I saw that. I was like, oh, that's the same thing from when I was a kid. So like I remember it as a kid, but I didn't understand that it was the same thing. But it did stick in my, like I remember 2 things from that camp. Well, 3 things. 1, I remember that somehow a tree could burn but still be there, which I thought was weird. 2, banana slugs. And 3, that my sister, I love you, Carrie, and her marshmallows, and that she would roast her marshmallows, but she didn't want it to burn. So she would like put it down to the fire and then pull it right back up again. So like it never actually got hot ever. So like those are the 3 things I remember from that trip. So I think to get back to your question, do you think that it's significant? Like, do you understand the significance?
Yeah.
Not in the same way as you would as an adult, but I think that it can still have an impression, right? Like, I don't think it's wasted on kids, if that makes sense. It's just different. It's a different experience. And definitely there were times where we've done, I don't remember what it was, but something, and you're going and touring things, and my dad has always really liked to read all the little plaques around everything. And I generally am not that patient. That's why I'm not a big museum person, unless it's something that I'm like actually already
Really
interested
into,
in learning about, right? Then I'll read the things. But even then, I don't necessarily like to read paragraphs and paragraphs of things. So I think that some of that, though, is less me being a kid and more just
personality,
me being impatient.
Or just what you're interested in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I've been thinking about that, thinking about this upcoming trip that I have with my stepson, and I think I get really excited to do things with him, and I get really excited to show him things, and I have to remind myself.
Hold on, Cheryl. You get excited about things? It's so surprising to hear. Okay.
But I'm also trying to remind myself, like, it may not be as significant to him or significant in the same ways, because I think about my memories of national parks. And Katie, I had the same memory from our childhood. I don't remember where we went, but I remember thinking, we're going to a national park. This playground is going to be amazing. And then, are you kidding me? There's not a playground here.
Well, we were young. We were like, we were in preschool. If that, I was probably in preschool. You might have been even younger. So
unless you and I have different memories, then you must have been a little older than that. If I remember also being disappointed,
we'd have to ask our mom.
But so, like, I remember that being a thing. So, like, I don't even know if I'm going to use the word national park or the word park when I talk about that, because my stepson has really specific ideas of what a park is, and he loves going to the park. And so I don't know if I want to use that. I might want to say we're going camping in this really beautiful place, or something like that, before we get there. So that, because I think that could be a common kid experience. I remember at Yellowstone, I remember thinking the walks were too long. And so, like, is it really worth it to go see these geysers? I remember thinking the geysers were smelly. Also remember loving when we saw the animals. That was a really big thing. I remember loving Old Faithful. We went to the Grand Canyon. I thought that was really cool. So I think it's like, I think I could understand significance in some ways. It got boring by some things that were probably disappointing to my parents, of like, are you kidding me? Do you know where you are right now? You should be appreciating this, So I think I'm trying to remind myself that before this trip for me, of like, if like for Daryl and I, we get to go to Yosemite. So that's great. And then for my stepson, he gets to go camping with us. And I think that's how I'm trying to set it up in my mind, of like, he loves camping. He loves being outside. So even if he doesn't care that he's in Yosemite, he'll be on an awesome camping trip, And so, and then for me, lucky me, I get to go to Yosemite, So I think I'm trying to like frame it like that, because I think there's going to be times with our kids where we're going to be disappointed by them not fully appreciating this amazing trip we took them on, And so I should ask our parents if they had that experience with us, because we were probably the worst. Like, I remember at some points where like we were in Europe and we were like arguing about something. And it was like, that must have been so frustrating for our parents, being like, we're taking you to Europe. Are you kidding me right now? And so I don't know. I just, it's a thought I've been having recently. So yeah.
Well, it's similar to the, like, you buy a kid a toy and they just want to play with the cardboard box. I mean, it's similar to that, where there may be something that that really is the big thing for them that you're like, what, really? Seriously?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. That's true.
All about expectations.
Yeah.
All right. So with all of those pre-trip spoilers, Katie, what trip are you going to actually tell us about today?
I'm going to talk about a trip that my husband Nathan and I took to California in September of 2017, where we visited several national parks, state parks, national forest, and the unifying theme was we called it our tree tour, because at some point I love trees, and at some point I probably just Googled like oldest tree in the world, biggest tree in the world, tallest tree in the world. And, looked at the different, like, what are those? And it turns out the tallest, largest, and oldest trees in the world are all in California, which is amazing. So it's that this was been early in our marriage that hatched this like trip idea that Nate and I came up with for like, what if we took a trip where we went to see all of them in one trip?
That's so cute.
And this kind of was on the back burner for years. And then our family was scheduling and, figuring out a family reunion for September of 2017. And we didn't have a big trip planned yet that year. And we were thinking, this might be the year that we do our tree tour. And we were able to tie this all together into this big grand 2-week, I think it was 14-day trip where we did all these different parks, saw all these trees, got to go to the family reunion. And Cheryl was on part of this trip. She was at the family reunion and at the trip going back up north. So she can chime in. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And she brought Gracie and we were all in the car together. So yeah, it was this is, a feat of planning, but it all worked out.
That's awesome.
Okay. So it sounds like this was a road trip.
Yeah, we actually looked at potentially flying down, renting a car. And it really didn't make sense. And we're like, well, this is all, we're mostly going to be driving anyway. So it would have just saved us like a day. And it's like, no, we'll just take our car and it's way cheaper. And then we'll have the comfort of our car. We don't have to pack for a flight and all that stuff. So yeah. So we drove down, in basically, in addition, so to be a little more specific, the tallest trees in the world are the coast redwoods. And, those are up in northwest coast of California. And then the largest trees are the giant sequoias. And they are up in the Sierra Nevada mountains, actually more towards Southern California. And then the oldest trees in the world are the Great Basin bristlecone pines. And those are like east of the Sierra Nevadas out in the White Mountains. So we had to kind of like tie this all together, plus this family reunion that was happening in the big area. So we decided to like drive. And then we also were thinking, well, if we're already going down there, neither Nate or I had been to Yosemite before. And we really wanted to go to Yosemite because, and there actually are sequoias in Yosemite as well. There's 3 sequoia groves there. So we decided to include that as well because, there wasn't enough going on with this trip already. So yeah, we took like a day and a half to drive down from Seattle to Yosemite, and that was our first stop. And we did stay.
You just kind of like hauled on down there then.
Yeah, we wanted to get that out of the way. We just did the I-5 route for most of the way and then cut right over from the Sacramento area over to Yosemite. Yeah.
And where'd you stay at Yosemite?
We stayed at the Yosemite Valley Lodge, which is in Yosemite Valley. There's more accommodations outside of the valley, but it takes like an hour in, an hour out. So like a 2-hour round trip if we were staying outside. So we would have to like drive an hour in just to get to the valley every day and then drive an hour back out at night. It was like, I don't want to do that. Let's just stay there. So it is, it's a little more expensive to stay in the valley, but we're only there for a couple of days. So it's like, okay, well, let's just do it. So we stayed in the valley, which was awesome. Nice. And the Valley Lodge is basically a motel that's in the national park.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah. So it's a more,
So what was booking it like? Because our listeners, they haven't heard me talk about my trip planning yet. However, I have booked a campsite in Yosemite for this summer, which I'm just looking on Google Maps right now. And right now it says closed. I think it's temporarily. Man. Oh, I hope things change before July.
I will say I can't speak about California, but I just saw today is April 27th, 2020. And I just saw today a post from something for Washington State talking about the incremental opening of state parks and things for short periods of time starting on May 5th. So
we'll see how that goes.
We'll see if that actually happens.
Yeah.
So that's a week from tomorrow from where we are right now.
And then we'll see if that backslides or not.
Right.
Like if that can
Yeah.
continue.
Right. And if your trip
Well, because
isn't
that
until
was one of those
July,
things, where they kind of
Maybe.
had to like take that away when it wasn't working out before the full stay home order was
Mhm.
issued. So
yeah.
yeah.
So anyway, I had to be online at exactly 7 a.m. on this day, like, and within minutes, everything, all those campsites was booked. What was it like to book a hotel room as opposed to a campsite?
Yeah, we didn't have to do that for the hotel
Okay.
room. We did book it like pretty early in 2017, I'll say, maybe like February or something like that.
Okay.
But it wasn't like we had to like, log on at a specific time and there was like,
Okay.
so it wasn't too bad.
Nice. And then
yeah.
this was in September, so not like the high summer months though.
That is true. So there might in like June, July, August, there may have been a more of a run on the hotel availability. But
Mhm.
we at the time we did not have children and we're not subject to school schedules. So it's like, well, and that's when the family reunion was going to be. So
Yeah.
that's kind of why we ended up going. Like, I think if it was, totally up to us, we might have done early summer or late spring because the waterfalls can like be a lot like, less water running through them, or it can even dry up if it's a really bad drought summer and you get the fires just get worse as the summer goes by. So September is not necessarily the best time to visit in terms of those issues, but it worked out for us. So yeah.
Nice. Okay. That's great. And what were the highlights in Yosemite?
I mean, just being in the valley is incredible. You're in this valley with these granite rock formations towering above you, like 3,000 feet. Like El Capitan is about 3,000 feet from base to summit, and Half Dome is about 4,800 feet above the valley floor. So you're just like, yeah, it's really dramatic. It's very awe-inspiring. And we actually drove in the dark. Like by the time we got to Yosemite, the night we got in, it was dark. So we woke up and got out of our room and got to see this very cool view of the valley.
That's magical.
Which was awesome. I know, it was great. Although I don't
That's
recommend
really cool.
necessarily driving those mountain roads in the dark. It was super twisty, turny, but it was a very cool morning. We actually originally had a tram tour booked up to Glacier Point, which is one of the like good views of the valley from up above and of Half Dome. But that was canceled because the road up there was closed due to fires because, it's California in the summertime.
Late in the summer,
Yeah. So we ended up doing the Valley Floor tram tour instead. And that was actually really cool. It was on our first day there. So it kind of gave us a good lay of the land. And the ranger that led the tour was really good and gave us some good info.
Cool.
That was kind of a good context. We went to like a super easy, this isn't even a hike, it's like a walk. It's like flat. You just walk to the Yosemite Falls. And that's really cool. There's buses that are just free and available to the public that go all around. There's different routes.
Cool.
So we just parked at the hotel and then just took the buses everywhere after that. And they run pretty frequently and were very convenient. And like public parking, not for hotel guests, is limited. So we didn't want to move our car anyway. So taking the bus was nice.
That makes sense.
So we just like took the bus, took this walk, went back to the bus stop, and then went somewhere else. So that was cool. We did go to that. There's a famous like view down the valley from a place called Tunnel View. That's like right when you're coming out of the tunnel into the valley that we went to on the tram tour. And we ended up going there multiple times while we were there. But that first day, it was so smoky that like you could just see smoke down in the valley from that tunnel view. And it was like, oh no, is this what it's going to be like every day? But then the other days that we went back to Tunnel View, it was actually a lot clearer. So that was good.
Cool.
So I definitely recommend going to Tunnel View to get that pretty view, although that's a really hot spot. So there's a lot of people there.
Oh, there's a tunnel. What's the deal with the tunnel?
Oh, it's just a tunnel that leads from outside the park to inside the valley, basically.
Does
or
it
it's
just
not
go through a
necessarily.
mountain?
Yeah, it's like a big rock tunnel that they used that they.
Oh, I'm Google imaging it. It looks like the classic image of
Yeah,
Yosemite.
yeah. So you're
Where
looking
like you
down
see all of those different like
rock formations and the
and the
cliff edges. Yeah.
trees and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Oh,
so you definitely
cool.
want to do that. But yeah, it's right at the end of this tunnel that goes into the park or into the valley portion of the park. So the park's way bigger than there's just a valley. I think the valley is only like 1% of the park or something. It's a very
Oh,
large
interesting.
park, but the valley is like the real like showstopper part. But the rest of the park
Gotcha.
is also beautiful because you're up in the Sierra Nevadas. So we did some stuff outside of the valley as well. But yeah, like it's really, I don't know, like it was just really amazing being in the valley. Like it's hard to describe. You can see the pictures, you can like kind of, you know, think, oh, that looks really pretty or really impressive, but then you get there and it's amazing. So
Mm.
yeah. And then we did the Mirror Lake Trail, and that kind of goes down below Half Dome. And we saw a helicopter rescue happen where we saw
Oh.
like a helicopter flying around under Half Dome, and then it flew away, and then it came back with somebody hanging down from it, and they
Oh,
went
wow.
down and they got somebody from the ground below Half Dome, and then they flew, 2 people were flying away from there, and I'm assuming they were
Wow.
airlifting them out to some kind of medical services or hospital. So I don't know what exactly happened, but a hiker got hurt or something. So that was kind of
boy.
crazy. We took a bunch of pictures of that, but
Ha!
that was like everyone on the trail was like, "What's going on?" We saw a bunch of deer. There's some pretty wildlife there.
Nice.
Yeah, it's just gorgeous. There's lots of different hikes and trails to do of all different difficulty levels, so you can just take your pick of what you want to do. And then the next day we had to figure out how to get to and from where the bristlecone pines are, which are kind of way out in the middle of nowhere, east of Yosemite, kind of near Death Valley.
So
So we
they're
actually-
not in the park.
No, they're in their own national forest called the Ancient Bristlecone Pine Forest. So,
Okay.
but the best way for us to do that was actually to drive over the Tioga Pass, which is in Yosemite National Park, which would take us over the Sierra Nevadas to the east side, where we could get to where the bristlecone pines are. And the Tioga Pass is actually one of the things that they recommend that you go do and see in the Yosemite anyway. So that worked
cool.
out super well. It's called the High Country because it's like way up above the valley. So you're at high elevation there. I mean, the valley's at high enough elevation already, but then you go up even more. And we did a hike to the Tuolumne Grove of sequoias. And so that was really cool. It was our first sequoias to see on that trip. And then we looked at the view of the valley from Olmsted Point, which was pretty. And then we went to the Tuolumne Meadows, which were really pretty. I understand that if you go earlier in the summer, there's a bunch of wildflowers. So sure, it's possible you'll get to see that if you go up to the Tuolumne
nice.
Meadows. But it was really pretty still. It's just high alpine country up there. So we enjoyed that. And then we drove all the way over to the east side of the mountains where you're kind of getting down in the desert out there and spent the night in Bishop, California. And then from there, we left early the next morning to drive up the mountains into the White Mountains to see the ancient bristlecone pines.
Wow. So Google is saying that it's a 7-hour drive from where you were staying in Yosemite to this bristlecone pine forest.
Yeah.
Isn't mountain travel weird because it's not
It's wacky.
as
yeah.
the crow flies, that's not that far, but you have to really go around and probably on some windy roads and everything.
Yeah, lots of windy roads and it just, we had to figure out how to get to and from this place that was really out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, Yosemite's remote enough, and then you're like going out east of there. So, but it worked out well. Yeah, so you're driving up into these other mountains, the White Mountains, which are like dry desert mountains. It's not like the Sierra Nevadas. And we you're just kind of going, you're in Bishop, which is kind of down in this other valley, and then you're going up and up into the White Mountains, and there's like almost nobody up there. And it's not a high traffic spot. And so I think there was just a few other cars in the parking lot the whole time we were at that bristlecone pine forest.
So a very different experience than being in Yosemite.
Yeah, Yosemite felt like, it definitely felt like a tourist place, at least in the valley, and it felt a little summer campy. Like everyone's like, we're all doing these different activities out in the woods, but there's like, cafeterias everyone's eating at and like stuff like that. And people are camping and like, I don't know, it felt like kind of like summer camp. It was really fun. And then, there's rangers and, this was like, we're going out in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, we went up, the ancient bristlecone pine forest is, most of the time you're around 10,000 feet elevation.
That's pretty high.
Yeah. So, it's high up there. There's not much else that grows up there, but these bristlecone pines are adapted to this environment. And so they don't have a lot of competition. So the bristlecone pines, so I should talk about like what's so special about them.
Yes, I was going to ask you.
Yes. So they are the oldest trees in the world. The oldest, I should say, non-clonal trees in the world. There are clonal trees that are colonies that are older. But they are the oldest like single organism trees in the world. There's multiple kinds of bristlecone pines. This is the Great Basin bristlecone pine. And they're way up in these dry mountains. There's not a lot of rainfall that happens there. There's just not a lot of other life up there. We saw like some birds and ground squirrels and things. That was pretty much it. So I think it was like sometime around like the 1950s or 60s when scientists were starting to look at these trees, and they like did some borings and figured out that how old these things are, and we're like, oh my goodness, these are super old trees. So the like reputed oldest one for a long time was the Methuselah tree, which is now 4,851 years old. So it's from BC times, like way, it's old, 4,851 years old. So it's incredible. The sequoias and redwoods can get really old too, and they're way more physically impressive than these bristlecone pines, which are these stunted little twisty. You should like just Google an image of a bristlecone pine. They're like really twisted and gnarled, and like they grow super slow. Like you'll look at this little Charlie Brown looking tree and they're like, oh yeah, that one's 200 years old. It's like, what?
Interesting.
So like they just grow super slow. They barely get any water.
They look like the trees from like a fantasy novel or movie where like there's some, it's like at the entrance to something important, or there's a secret passage that goes inside the tree, or it'll come alive witchy, and do something, or
witchy, gnarled kind of trees. Yeah.
They look dead as well.
Well, a lot of them are. So there are ones that are dead that are just still there because like, there's nothing almost that's like, making them, decompose or fall down or anything. And then there's ones that are like mostly dead but not all dead.
So mostly dead.
Exactly. So they have like you can kind of see like most of them's dead, but then there's like this one section that's still alive. They're really weird trees. But just being among these trees, we did this 4.5 mile loop around that took us through the Methuselah Grove, which is where the Methuselah tree is located. They do not publicize its actual location, and but they tell you this is the grove, it's somewhere here, but they're worried about vandals.
Well, and so this is so funny. I was reading, and I don't remember exactly where. I think it's a book that I just started. I was reading in the last week about, and I didn't remember it was the bristlecone pine, but where they've had found the oldest tree, And this was, like in the 50s, or I don't know, it was older. Maybe it was in the 1800s. I don't remember. But somebody chopped it down to study it.
Oh, gross.
So then it wasn't the old
Yeah.
tree anymore because they had chopped it down. So so they keep a few things like that secret so that no one is gonna either vandalize it or, destroy it, even for scientific research or something. So
yeah, I think that's what happened. There was one older tree than Methuselah. It was called Prometheus, so maybe that's what it was. And then now they've also said that there's this other tree that's 5,069 years old, but they don't have a name for it, or at least they don't tell the public what it's called, but it's in the same area. So over 5,000 years. So, I mean,
wow.
Again, the sequoias and redwoods,
that's
way more impressive
like
and
pyramids in
cool
Egypt's
to see.
age, right?
But these bristlecone pines, you're standing there and you're surrounded by these trees that are 4,000 or 5,000 years old, and it's just insane to be seeing these. And you're like, how have these been around that long? But they are, and they're just all growing up there in the mountains in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, it was really bizarre and kind of surreal to go see them, but very cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
That is cool.
Was it worth it? Was it worth, that's quite a trip out there.
Yeah. I mean, if we wanted to revisit some of these national parks, I don't think we'd go back and do the bristlecone pines again, because it's so out of the way and they don't have that spectacular kind of angle that the other, the sequoias and redwoods do. But it was totally worth it for this trip. I was really glad that we able to tie it in and make it out there and go see them.
Cool.
Oh, and it's also super quiet up there, quiet, otherworldly quiet. I don't know if it's because there's just no other people or developments around, or if it's so high or what, but it's just probably the most quiet I've ever heard.
There aren't a lot of other animals even around to make noise. And I'm just looking on the satellite images from Google Maps, and it doesn't even look like the trees are particularly close to each other most of the time.
No,
right?
they're
So
not
you think of a
thickly,
forest, and you generally think of trees close, but they're relatively spaced out, and there's not stuff growing around them it's just dirt around them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really arid
Wow.
up there. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that being extra quiet.
So what was next after this place?
So this is where we we went back to Yosemite, because really the best way in and out of this place was going over that Tioga Pass.
Interesting.
So we went back to Yosemite, and this is where we did our splurge for the trip. We did one night in the Ahwahnee Hotel, which is the historic 1920s hotel in Yosemite. It's still that one, and the Old Faithful Lodge are what you think of when you think of national park lodges. It's gorgeous. So we did the one night there, and that was really cool. So
is it in The Shining? I read online
no.
it's from The Shining.
No,
Okay.
it's not. That's not it.
Well, why did the internet tell me it is?
It's a good question.
Somebody got
Nothing on the internet is
confused.
ever wrong. So Katie must be wrong.
I think the one in The Shining is in Colorado.
Is it a similar looking hotel?
Yeah, it's a kind of
Okay.
I don't know which one is. I mean, then the one in the movie is called the Overlook
Stanley
Hotel.
According to
Yeah,
Wikipedia.
that's the actual name. Yeah, the Overlook is what they
it's in
call it in the
Estes
movie.
Park.
But,
Yeah, in Colorado. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not in California, but the Ahwahnee is. I mean, Cheryl, you've been to. Well, I mean, Ryan, I don't know if you probably would have at least seen this. You may not have had any time to explore, but the Grand Californian Hotel at Disneyland, that is kind of next to Disney's California Adventure, is modeled after the Ahwahnee Hotel.
Oh,
So Cheryl,
cool.
So here's the thing: you don't have to spend the night there. You should at least go and look around. It is worth looking at. It is beautiful. Go inside, go wander the grounds, just go check it out. And then they have they have a hotel bar that we ate dinner at one night, and then we did the breakfast in the dining room the next morning. Their dinner has a dress code that's like you have to have a jacket for men or a dress for women. Like it's like a
I'm
fancy
out.
dinner. And so we didn't do that. We were like, we're taking like this big, like, you know,
You're doing a road
trip where
trip. You're wearing road
it's a
trip
road
clothes.
trip and
Yeah.
we're like hiking and we're not going to wear, like, we don't want to bring fancy clothes. So we just did breakfast and we dressed kind of like, you know, kind of nice, but not like
In your
fancy.
fanciest graphic tee. Cargo pants.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, wow. Look at that building.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's
that looks
beautiful.
gorgeous.
So all we did that next morning was like hung out in the hotel and outside the hotel, and like we like played games and just went around, took pictures, and enjoyed ourselves, and it was just beautiful.
Nice.
Oh my gosh, look at that dining room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's so funny because
amazing.
when I think about a national park, even if I think about a fancy hotel, I still think like it's fancy because of the architecture, not so much because of like the dress code in the dining room. So that's such an interesting combination.
I know. We saw people, you know, dressed in their, you know, black tie or whatever it was. And it was just like, oh, like you had to pack that in here though. Like, I don't know.
Well, but at the same time, if you think about their marketing to lots of different ranges of people, and so if that's the hoity-toity swanky place, if you're going to go to Yosemite, but you aren't the type of person to do camping, you don't stay in motels, like you are the type of person who goes to all those nice places, you would probably fly in, you'd have a car pick you up and drive you out there, you know? So like,
yeah, I guess so.
I can see that.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And you said it is a splurge thing to do, right, Katie? Even staying there.
It's expensive. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we've done this a number of times on trips now. We do like one night at the like fancy thing and
That's a
do
fun
that
idea.
as a splurge.
Yeah.
We've done that several
like
times
that.
now.
I am curious just
so-
because you mentioned the Grand Californian, and if I remember right, that's the most expensive of the Disneyland hotels.
Yes.
So it's a splurge. Which is more expensive?
Oh goodness. I think the high end of the Grand Californian is more. I feel, but I don't know. I didn't look at all the like suites or anything.
Sure.
At the Awani.
But
So
just
I
like
don't
for
know
your
how much they're
average room.
charging. But for your average room, I mean, it's probably pretty comparable, honestly. They're somewhere
Really?
similar. Yeah.
So when they were trying to replicate this hotel, they were like, oh, we'll just replicate their pricing model. then,
Yeah, there you
too."
go.
I'm sure that's exactly what Disney was thinking.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
really interesting. Well, okay, so if somebody could either stay in the Grand Californian or the Awani,
Oh my gosh.
which should they stay in?
Oh, well, I haven't actually stayed at the Grand Californian, so I don't know that I have the best perspective on this. But I mean, it depends. It depends on where they're coming from. If they're a big Disney fan, probably the Grand Californian. But the Awani's pretty amazing. So yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
But it is a historic hotel. Like the rooms are not the regular rooms, like the one we got, are not like big giant luxury rooms. These are like, you know, 1920s rooms.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. But it's more
Side
about
note.
staying there. Yeah.
I just discovered another website, and then we can move on to the next part of your trip. I just thought of you, Cheryl. Now I know that you're expanding to more camping things and you enjoy camping,
Yes. Yeah.
but there is a website called glampinghub.com.
I have looked at that website. That's actually, I found I think it was that website where I found a place near Crater Lake that we're going to stay this summer when we go on our road trip.
Yeah.
That we're going to
Ooh.
stay at this place called like the Crater Lake Resort, I think, where it's like a tent that has like beds in it and furniture and stuff. So we're going to do glamping
Oh,
one night.
cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
I know. I'm so excited. But I think it was Glamping Hub where I found that. And they have some really good search features, actually. I liked it a lot. That was a good site.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nice.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry
so
to derail.
you're done with Yosemite. What's next?
So we drove then down to Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks. So these are two national parks. They are different ones, but they are adjacent to one another and jointly managed. And this is where the giant sequoias, I mean, there's giant sequoias in like Yosemite, there's giant sequoias just in other places in the Sierra Nevadas, but like the greatest concentration of them and the oldest ones and the biggest ones are in Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Park. So we just drove south down there. We stayed in the Grant Grove cabins. There's not a lot of options for places to stay up there. A point about like Wi-Fi and like cell reception and like data and things like that. I think we had spotty reception in Yosemite, but not a lot. And I think like the hotels had Wi-Fi and stuff, and maybe the restaurants. The whole time we were at Sequoia and Kings Canyon, we didn't have anything. We didn't have like any connection of any kind to anything. I think there was like one restaurant we went to that had Wi-Fi, and we're like, so then we but we had to like use physical maps the whole time. We were totally out of reach of anybody at that point. So that was we felt very remote in that way.
Interesting.
So
more there than when you were at Bristlecone.
Well, Bristlecone was extremely remote, but we were only there for a few hours. Like we were there in Sequoia and Kings Canyon for a couple of days. So there's a lot more people there than in Bristlecones. But like if you're staying there, it just feels weird to be, I don't know, maybe people that spend more time out in the wilderness are more used to that. It was like, whoa, we're out here. Okay.
I think that big difference is maps though, because even if you're like, it's fine, I'm not going to check my email a lot anyway, whatever. Like navigation.
Yeah, the map thing was the weirdest part, and having to like just use the paper maps that they had there. So, but it worked out just fine. It wasn't a big deal. There's really one main highway in these national parks, so it was not like we were going to get lost. We weren't going way off trail or anything like that. So then we did. We were there for like a day and a half. We did a full day at Sequoia National Park and then like a half day at Kings Canyon National Park.
Okay.
So it's at Sequoia. We first we did a cave tour. This was Nate's thing that he wanted to do. It was called Crystal Cave, and it is a marble cavern. And it's very active. There's a lot of water running through it. There's like a whole stream running by the path for a part of it. And like, I'd never been in such a wet cave before. I've been on a number of cave tours, and like, sometimes you see the water dripping from the stalactites, but like, this was like wet. Like there's like a stream in there.
Wow.
So that was super cool. So you take like a hike, you're like hiking down the side of the mountain to get down to this cave. And then you like hike back up the side. It was a pretty cool cave. So that was really fun.
I love a cave tour.
I'm not good at describing a cave, but it was cool.
Yeah, no caves are definitely cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really cool. And then we went to the General Sherman tree. So the General Sherman tree is the largest tree in the world.
Okay, and you mentioned that before, largest. What does largest mean? So it's by volume, by the trunk volume. It's hard to measure. There's never an exact measurement, but so you can also find and look up, stats for what they call, I love this measurement, the stoutest tree in the world, which is the one with the widest diameter.
Aww.
And that's, I know, which I kind of want to go see those. And I like that they're stout, because I think that's a cute word to describe them. But the largest trees are the ones with the greatest trunk mass or volume, or however you want to put it.
Okay. So
the General Sherman tree it's not only the largest living tree in the world, it's the largest living organism by volume on the planet. So it's pretty incredible.
Wow.
So largest mostly just meaning like mass.
Yeah, it's just massive. So It's about 52,513 cubic feet. They estimate the age to be 2,300 to 2,700 years old. They don't know exactly how old
young.
It is. Well, compared to those bristlecones, but.
And was this one also hard to find its exact location for the same reason? Oh, okay.
They're like, here it is. Here's a trail and a parking lot to, and yeah, it's this one's
Oh,
highly
wow.
publicized.
So the
You just
bristle
walk up.
cone is more
Yeah.
like finding a celebrity's house where like it's hard to find where the celebrity lives, but this one was like
Yeah.
just
Yeah. So
publicized.
this is a giant tree. It is very cool to see. It is one of those things where you can look at a picture. It does not do it justice. It's very cool to see in person. It's also 275 feet tall, so very tall.
Nice.
Not as tall as the coast redwoods, but pretty dang tall. The diameter is about 25 feet of its trunk at breast height, which is how you measure trees.
25 feet.
Yeah. And that's at 4.5 feet above grade. At the ground level, it's like 30 something feet wide.
Oh my gosh.
So, I mean, it's just amazing. And they really are, these giant sequoias, they really are red. Like you can see them between all the other trees because they're so big and they really do have this red bark. It's pretty amazing. So we spent a while just looking at this tree because it was so incredible. We also did another like walk nearby around a really pretty meadow with a bunch of sequoias around it. That was called the Big Trees Trail. So we had a nice afternoon of beautiful giant sequoias, and it was just amazing.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So we have 2 out of 3 trees.
Yeah. So yeah, we did Kings Canyon after that, the day after that. It's a canyon in the mountains. It's a little hard to describe. It's not too dissimilar from Yosemite, but it definitely looks different. I can't just really describe it. You just kind of have to look up what it looks like. We also saw the General Grant tree, which is the second largest tree in the world. Its trunk is wider than General Sherman, but it's not as big overall. And then we went to the family reunion, and it's a family reunion. We really had a great time spending the weekend with the family, and that's where Cheryl joins the story.
Yeah.
And then after that, we started heading north up the coast toward the redwoods.
We drove over the Golden Gate Bridge.
Oh, yes, we did. Yeah. Yeah,
and
that was super fun.
We drove to a glass beach that was like added at least an hour to our trip because it took us out to Highway 1. And I think before we were on Highway 101. And so we're like way out on the coast. But Katie and I were like, are you kidding me? We have to see this beach that like, I think in our minds, it was like, instead of sand, there's just little like glass pieces.
Yeah. Like polished glass. Yeah.
Yeah. Not like sharp glass, but like, and it's more that the glass is mixed in with like the sand and the rocks and everything. So it was cool. And it was just cool to be out on the coast.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd recommend someone go that far out of their way.
I know. Like, yeah, this is for reference. This is Fort Bragg, California. But yeah, it was nice to be out on the beach. I love the ocean. So yeah, that was cool. And then the next day we made it up to the Redwood. So the Redwoods have both national and state parks. So there's, they're kind of all intermingled. But we, and so the redwoods, similar to the coast redwoods, they're the tallest trees in the world, and that one is not a measurement with a qualifier like the largest tree. They're just the tallest trees in the world. The tallest
they're
redwood.
Just tall.
Yeah, well, those are simple to measure, unlike largest, which is like, well, what's the biggest? Is it widest or is it massive? So the tallest trees, the very tallest one is called Hyperion. It is 380 feet tall compared to General Sherman, which is 275. So it's over 100 feet taller than General Sherman, which is a very tall tree as well. And it is estimated somewhere between 600 and 800 years old. So it's actually not that old compared to some of these other trees.
It's not even 1,000 years.
I know. And these redwoods, they grow very fast. That's why it can be so tall in that amount of time.
But they don't they're on the coast, so it's a lot more moisture that they have access to.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. It sounds like that makes a big difference. They get a lot of moisture. It's very foggy there. They get rain. And they do not publish the location of Hyperion. I actually was able to like use my Google skills and find out where it is because I'm good at research. But it is like, it really is like in one of the most remote parts of those parks. And we didn't have a ton of time. Like we had mainly most of one day to explore the redwoods. So I was like, I don't think we even have time to hike out to it. So what we did is we just went through some of the really cool like areas and trails where some of the other really tall redwoods are. They're not the tallest ones, but they're like quite tall, you know. And so
well, and really you can't see the top from
exactly.
the bottom anyway.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can tell which one's taller.
Yeah, you definitely can't when you're just standing on the ground. So we saw a lot of beautiful, tall, old redwoods. Yeah, the cool ones with the fire scars or different things. Yeah, and Cheryl was with us, and that was fun. It was really cool to be able to conclude our tree tour and have seen these 3 different amazing types of trees. Cheryl, any other highlights from the redwoods that you remember?
Well, the trees of mystery.
Oh, well, yes, we have to talk about the trees of mystery.
So it was so funny because, I mean, we've shared about this super early on in the podcast, but
a couple times, I think.
Yeah, our family went on a road trip and went through the coastal redwoods when we were in elementary school.
Sometime around then.
And we drove past the trees of mystery. I mean, you can't miss it with like the giant Paul Bunyan and the ox outside.
Well, and the signs that advertise for it.
Oh yeah, and every single
of miles.
billboard, yeah, or like any brochure anywhere. They must pay a lot in advertising. And so our family didn't go in because it was expensive, and we were like, we can see all these trees out here for free. And so we did go in the gift shop and we got a bookmark there. And then my dad used that bookmark for years as he read us the C.S. Lewis like Chronicles of Narnia and the Harry Potter books. And so he would work it into the story sometimes. And it was always this like joke in our family because we were like, what's so mysterious about these trees? You know, and so we're like, what's the big deal? And even like I remember our dad went up to the ticket booth and asked them like, okay, like what's this all about? And they were like, I mean, there's tree. Like the person didn't even have that good of a description, and so we're just like, so what's up with the like, what's the mystery, you know, and everything. And so it was a big.
The mystery is what is the mystery.
You ever think about that? And so it was funny because we didn't plan to go there. Like that was not a part of our plan. We went to the redwoods, but we just thought. Like Katie had done a lot of research. Oh, it wasn't
part of your plan.
No, but you know, Katie kind of knew some areas we should drive through and everything. But then we were Googling what are trails we can go on with a dog because we had my dog Gracie with us.
Right.
And with the national park areas, you can't go on a trail. You can go on roads with dogs, but you can't go on trails. And so all of a sudden we realized, like we found online that the Trees of Mystery allows dogs. And so it was like, well, and Katie and I were like, wait, should we go to the Trees of Mystery? And then it became this very exciting thing for us. And Nate was just along for the ride, I think, with that.
Yeah.
So Katie, we've heard Cheryl's perspective of the Trees of Mystery. I'd love to hear your perspective on the Trees of Mystery.
Oh, I mean, so just for reference, like the impressive redwoods that you can see in this area are not in the Trees of Mystery. Like just go to there's a bunch of different trails and roads where you can drive or walk through redwood groves and see amazing redwood trees that are in the national state parks. The Trees of Mystery is a private property thing where they're charging a bunch of money but Cheryl and I had this, you know, buildup of having this lifetime of like jokes about it, and the camp factor is amazing. So like I really enjoyed it. I thought it was hilarious because it's so campy and ridiculous, and like there's these like audio clips that you can play by hitting a button on these different little speakers, and they sound like the most like a really, really old Disney like educational clip or something like that. It was just so funny. It was I thought it was hilarious. But not everyone may have that reaction because they don't have this sort of like inside joke build up from over time. I'd be really curious to see like what the general public thinks of it. I suppose we could look on Yelp or something or
Well,
TripAdvisor.
Ryan
but,
went and didn't
Yeah.
have a family inside joke about it.
No.
yeah,
It was
your
definitely
thought on
entertaining.
it?
Like it was, but I'm like you. I like kind of that nostalgic. It's cheesy. Like I can enjoy those sorts of things, like the MST3K, riffing on movies
Yes.
type of a thing. Like so, I can enjoy
Yes.
that. And there were some cool trees in there. It's not like the trees aren't cool. Like I don't remember what they call it, but there's a bunch of and I never know if it's one tree or it's multiple trees, but it kind of like curves around. It almost looks like a pipe organ.
Oh yeah,
or
that was like the
whatever.
cathedral tree or something.
Yeah, so like there's some cool stuff in there. It's not like
Yeah.
it's a total
Yeah, there's not-
waste.
And
but
I did
it
like the
isn't-
gondola skyway thing
Yeah.
that took you up because you could see like over the trees. You went through the trees and you could see up over the trees and see the ocean from the top, and so that
Yeah.
was cool.
I wasn't super impressed with the
No,
gondola.
I think our difference, Ryan, is that when Katie and Nate and I went there was hardly anyone else there. And
Oh, it was
so
a
we
bunch of
like
clothes,
walked on
yeah.
the gondola when we went.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
we didn't
no,
have
we
to
stood in
wait.
line for like 15 minutes or something
Oh,
like that.
no,
So
no.
I
We
think
just walked-
things change.
it was
I
like
think
the
things change
last
when you have to
one.
wait in line. Like if
Yeah.
you have to wait in
Yeah.
line, you're like, this better be good.
Yep.
And
No, I
we were
think
just
that's
like, this
true.
is awesome, and hardly anyone is here.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
Yeah.
I think it's a good gondola
Yeah.
experience. But
No, but
dogs
it's-
are allowed even on the gondola. So
There you
that's
go.
pretty cool.
No, but I think it's enjoyable. It's not as impressive, like you said, Katie. It's not as impressive as actually in like Redwood National Park or State Park
Yeah.
or whatever. Those trees are much more impressive, but it's still fun. And even just stopping in the parking lot, the gift shop is something else.
Yep.
But even just
I
seeing
love the gift
Paul
shop.
and Babe.
Oh
Like,
my goodness.
that's
Yeah,
entertaining.
definitely at least stop and see the big Paul Bunyan and Babe and go in the gift shop because that's a whole
Yeah.
different thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my
Totally.
goodness. And Cheryl, where were it was somewhere in one of these parks where we saw, didn't we see a herd of elk somewhere along one of the way? Where
I
was
think
that?
so. I
That
don't
was
even
somewhere.
remember.
I think it was
Yeah.
somewhere around there.
Yeah, that was
I'd have
really
to go
cool.
back and look at the pictures and figure out where we were at the time. But oh yeah, we went to and then on the way back home. So then we headed out of the Redwoods and drove up the coast a little while and then headed back to I-5 and went back up. But on the way we got to go up the coast and do some really pretty coastal driving with like where the highways like hugging right along the coast, which was pretty.
Nice.
And we went to the sand dune, one of the sand dune areas in Southern Oregon, and
It's so
that was
pretty.
cool. Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was. I enjoy being out on the coast, so that was fun.
Yeah.
Yay!
Way better than I
Yeah.
thought.
And then we went on I-5 and went home. So that part was like,
Yeah.
but yeah.
So before we do our usual wrap up questions, Katie, I have
Mhm.
another question for you. If somebody could go to just the oldest tree in the world, the largest tree in the world, or the tallest tree in the world, which one do you think they should do?
Oh, gosh. I mean, so the one that feels the most impressive when you're there, that's the easiest to perceive, I think, is that General Sherman tree, which is the largest because you can kind of get the best sense of scale of it. The oldest tree is impressive, but not physically. It's less physically impressive and more just it just knowing that it's so old is amazing. And then the tallest trees, like we were saying, like the redwoods are very large. So they are also very, they're close to the largest trees in the world. They're just not quite as big as the sequoias. But you can't really perceive the height difference between a 275-foot tall tree and a 380-foot tall tree. Like at that point, you're kind of just looking up at this really, really tall tree. So I think the General Sherman and the giant sequoias are pretty amazing because you can kind of get that sense of how big the trunk on those trees is. So I'd probably say that. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. All right. So, Katie, I have some questions for you. The first one is based on the title of our podcast, Take Me With You. If you could take us with you to just one thing on this trip, what would it be and why?
Oh my goodness, that one's hard. Well, I mean, Cheryl, you were on part of this trip, so and then
Thanks for
um,
taking me with you.
yeah, I already did that. Um, um, and Ryan, you've also been to Redwoods, so I'd probably not say the Redwoods because you guys have both been there. Oh gosh, I mean, yeah, maybe the sequoias. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, yeah, and it's pretty remote. You're like way up in the Sierras that are, like, and not in a, yeah, it's kind of out of the way. So not everyone gets to go there. So yeah, I think at the giant sequoias would be pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
And this question we've slightly modified because of our COVID-19 situation right now. So it's either what's your next trip or what do you hope your next trip will be?
We do have a trip on the books right now. I think it's in August, a beach trip with our family near ocean shores. So hopefully that can still happen, but we will see. That's it for us right now. We don't have anything else scheduled, so which is probably a good thing at this point. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And do you have any travel questions for us?
What's your, do you have any kind of strange concepts or inspirations for a trip? Like with my tree tour was kind of this, I don't know if anyone else has done this specific trip where they're like, I'm going to go see the oldest, the largest, and the tallest tree in the world. Maybe people do. I don't know. But do you have any kind of interesting inspiration or idea for a trip that you've either done already or you want to do?
Ooh.
I mean, I don't know that I have any that are as well developed as your tree trip. And just, me being me, I'm like, oh, that's a great thing for a tree trip. I love that.
Yeah.
There was, so the very first episode that I recorded for our podcast, I talked about a trip to Switzerland. And that one was one that was it was all built around one thing, which was this is going to sound really weird, but I had a week to kill in Europe. I was already in Europe.
Darn.
And then I know, darn. And then I had other things I was going to do a week later, but I didn't have anything in between. So I was like, okay, I've got a week, and I was all by myself. And I was like, okay, if I'm in Europe, what is something that I want to do that other people would not be super interested in doing? And so I decided I wanted to go to CERN, which a lot of people have never even heard of. And you can go back to our first episode to listen to that if you'd like to know more about it. But everything then got built around me going to CERN in Switzerland. So everything else was connected to, okay, if I'm going to CERN and if I'm going on this date, what other things can I see? And then, of course, most of the things were science related. So I went and saw where, Einstein's flat. I went to the Einstein Museum and did all of these very kind of physics, science focused things. And a lot of my trips tend to have some sort of science bent to them. But I don't know that any of them I don't know that I formed any as specifically around trees the way you did. I really love that idea for planning a vacation though.
Yeah, no, I love that. That definitely feels similar to me. And you had to figure out how to tie stuff together and what made sense. The planning can be really kind of fun and challenging for that type of thing. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Cheryl?
I don't know if I have things in the same way.
That's okay.
Well, you want to go to Antarctica, so that's a thing.
I mean, I do want to go to Antarctica.
You want to and it's mainly to see penguins, so that's, that's
and I really want to go to all 7 continents. But I think that is a common theme that sometimes I have to fight with my travel planning is I want to do everything. I really do. So even
to check it off your list.
Yeah, I think about it'd be cool to go to all of the blank. I'd love all the national parks in the United States. That'd be super cool.
That's a lot.
Or there's so many things where it's oh, it'd be cool if I did all of them. And so, but yeah, I don't think I have the same way. I mean, I will do different searches around whatever the something-est cities to visit, like
Yeah.
the best cities for blank
Food.
type of person for food. Yeah. Or like, I mean, I think all of my trips are food themed, and a lot of
You
them
think?
are like, it's
I
a lot
know.
of, yeah. I would say this isn't even like a trip, but even in a day, I will think about the day and like, all right, well, what are these foods I want to get, or what are the restaurants I want to get to,
Oh,
or
wow.
the types of foods I want to get, and then how do I work the day around getting those?
Really?
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, I
Wow.
love food.
That's so funny. Food is such an afterthought for me.
And I'm
so
somewhere
if
in the
I'm-
middle, so there you go.
If I'm visiting a region, I really do think about like, all right, what are all of the regional foods that I really want to make sure I try, and how do I make sure that I get all of them, you know? And so which is one of the reasons I like food tours, because you can check a whole lot of them off the list in like an afternoon. Yeah, and so I do a lot of searching based on like, okay, top places to visit for hikers, or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, and so I just, as I
Sure.
keep thinking about where do I want to go, I try to think about it with different filters, because I think as this podcast shows, there are so many places that we didn't even know we would love.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
And so I think
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about, even as I want to visit more of the US, what are places in the US that I didn't even really know I wanted to go, but if I like fill in the blank, then I might like it, you know? And so I'm just trying to evaluate choosing a location based on various parameters that I search
Mhm.
over time, I guess. But I don't,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just like, I don't think I have any specific idea like that, but I really like that as like, what's the theme behind a trip? I think that's such a fun way to build a trip, Katie. So
Well,
that's
except
really neat.
Cheryl, what I just heard you say was you do, and it's food.
Yeah, that's true.
Because like you
Yeah.
do, you think, okay, I want to, what are all the regional foods and how do I make sure that I do
Yeah.
them all? And then you do food tours to try and get some of them. And then you plan restaurant. Like, it sounds
Yeah.
like you do have your theme, and your theme is food.
Well, I mean, that's part of like, that's why I went to New Orleans for my honeymoon. Like, we seriously, because
food.
like, yeah, Daryl and I very early on in our relationship were like, we're going to New Orleans someday. We're going to, because we were both like, we love to eat. Let's go to New Orleans and let's eat. And like, I don't even know if we cared what else we did there. We wanted to go there and eat, and that's what we did. And we went and did some other stuff too. But like, there was so much about like, how do we get all the good foods in on this trip? And like, being married to someone who likes food as much as I do, like, that's probably going to be like all of our trips in the future will be about the eating. Yeah. Unless like, and I guess unless it's with a kid, like this summer, I'm thinking about this trip and I'm like, okay, like this is with my stepson, so I want it to be intentional that like the three of us will enjoy it. So then I was thinking like, okay, what are unique, memorable things that a kid would care about? And then that's my filter.
Mm.
So like that, a road trip isn't necessarily going to be about the food in the same way, but if it's a new
Sure.
region, then it really is about the food.
We can go to
Good
In-N-Out
question,
Burger
Katie.
on the way, so there you go.
That's
Because
true.
we
There
definitely
we
did
go.
that
Yeah.
multiple times on this trip, you know. So
Well, even like I do think about, Ryan, what was that ice cream place that you've been to like 5 out of 6 of them in? Is it in Slovenia?
Well, there's an ice cream place in Slovenia, Cacao,
Uh-huh.
that I love. It's my favorite ice cream shop in the entire world.
Yeah.
But I think there's only like 3 of them, and I've been to 1.
Oh, it must have been something else then. There was some place, I thought it was ice cream, and you said like, oh, there's like 6 of them, and I've been to 5 of them, and I missed this one. And I was like, oh my gosh, how could you miss that one?
Yes. No. Yes. So when Serena, Tom, and I were in Ireland last summer, there is I think, is it Murphy's or something? There's a brand of ice cream shop, and they have a certain number of those shops around Ireland. And did I say Iceland? Or did I
No,
say
you said
Ireland?
you said Ireland.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So they've got these shops around Ireland, and there's a certain number of them, and we didn't make it to all of them. We made it to like 5 out of
Well,
the
now
6
you're
of
gonna
them
have
or
to go
something.
back and
Oh, darn.
I-
Okay.
complete the
For me,
the
I'm
ice
like,
cream
oh
tour.
my gosh, I would want to go to all 6. Like
Well,
if I'm close, I'd be like, oh, let's
And I
do this.
did want to go to all 6, but it was an issue of what could we practically do.
Okay.
Like we
that's
didn't
fair.
plan the trip around those shops. We didn't know that those shops existed until we got there. Right. We already had plans to go places. And okay, you laugh. I could plan a trip around, you could plan an Ireland trip around those ice cream shops. Now that I know that they exist, you could totally do it.
Oh,
Okay.
I like the idea
good
of
to know
that.
because at some point I'm going to go to Ireland. So
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
that's so funny. Oh
Yep.
my goodness.
And on that note, let's transition to the next part of our episode that used to be called Wish You Were Here, but now we're calling Wish You'd Stay Home, since we are all under stay home orders still, at least as of this recording. We are going to each highlight a virtual attraction of some place that you could go or something that you could do while we are not really traveling much farther than our own homes in the grocery store. So some cool virtual things that you can do or see or experience from home. So Katie, what would you like to do for your Wish You'd Stay Home?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not home much more than I was before because I have 2 babies and I wasn't getting out a whole lot with them.
So you should be an
So
expert then, yeah?
yeah, my husband's been working from home, so that's been a big change. But yeah, so given that the Disney parks all of the worldwide Disney parks have been closed for a while now, and we can't get there to enjoy them, I recommend listening to Disney parks music and podcasts to get a taste of the parks while we can't go there. You can do this anytime you're missing the parks, even when they're not shut down, but particularly now. And when I say parks music, I'm not referring to Disney movie soundtracks. I'm referring to the music played in the parks.
How do you find that?
Yeah, well, there's various ways. So there's a ton of it on YouTube. You can just find it on YouTube. And
like,
then
do
there's
you have to search for a specific thing, like
you probably would
Tiki
start
Room
with
music,
that.
or do you?
Yeah, and then you'd probably get you can find playlists of different parks music that way, and find related music. And then there's a site called Sorcerer Radio, which is a good one that has different music streams. You can just hit play and listen to their curated, parks music. And then the way I do it is the more high effort, way where I curate something myself, which is I torrent music from Mouse Bits and then create playlists myself so I can listen to them.
Okay,
the
there
easier
is a
way is to
playlist on
just
Spotify called Disney
Oh,
Parks
cool.
Collection. So
Awesome.
if someone has Spotify, it looks like it's
So if you don't
pretty
want to spend a bunch of time
wow.
torrenting music like I did a number of years ago, just do that. Yeah, so there's background and area music. There's attraction and show audio. There's all kinds of different stuff. So I've got playlists of this stuff, and it's just fun to listen to. It makes me, get a little bit of that parks vibes, which is awesome. And then I also listen to Disney podcasts that focus on the parks. My favorite one is Mousetalgia. They're awesome.
Mousetalgia.
Yeah, so nostalgia, but
portmanteau.
Mousetalgia. Yeah, they're great.
Yep.
They're a West Coast based one. So they focus on Disneyland. They also talk about Walt Disney World too, but they're mostly focused on Disneyland and Disney history. So yeah. So that's my wish you'd stay home is get your fix of the Disney parks.
Oh,
Nice.
that's awesome.
Cheryl?
Well, I love how many places that are involved in the arts or are the arts one way or another are just really active on their Facebook pages right now. And one is the Seattle Symphony is super active on Facebook right now. And it has been so fun. They've been really creative with just a ton of free content right now, which is really cool. So obviously they can't have concerts. And so they are having they're going live a lot and just posting a lot of videos. And so they're doing lots of members of the symphony in their home, just playing a
Oh,
piece
cool.
on their instrument, or just
Oh.
talking about their instrument, or like introducing you to like, oh, there's a
Hello, this is
percussionist and
Mr. Violin.
yeah. Yep, exactly. I'm so glad that
Okay.
you understood exactly what I was talking
Yep,
about.
introduce me to your
So just,
instrument.
like talking about like what their instrument is like. They've done the thing, which I'm sure we've all seen, where like people sync up their playing, and so then it becomes several instruments playing together,
Mm.
but each from their homes. And so it's just been really cool that, I mean, obviously I'm sure they're trying to like stay on the forefront of people's minds and everything, but it's really awesome how much content they're putting out there. And I mean, I think we're once again seeing how important the arts are, and it's cool that they are staying active with this. So I would say maybe check out your local symphony to see what they're up to, or the Seattle Symphony's one is really great.
That's
How about
great.
you, Ryan?
I'm gonna actually recommend a book, which I feel
Ooh.
kind of weird because I don't typically do a lot of reading, but I've been doing way more reading. And whether this is something you decide to, get an ebook for or check out from your library digitally, because most libraries, at least in our area, are closed right now, whatever. But actually, this was recommended to me from a podcast that I listened to that Cheryl recommended to me several years
Oh.
ago called Oh No, Ross and Carrie,
Oh,
which
it's such
I
a
very
good
much enjoy.
podcast.
And towards the end of last year, 2019, they just kept saying, everybody needs to read this book. Everybody needs to read this book. And it was like, they weren't a sponsor or anything. They just had both read it. And I decided to start reading it. I borrowed it from a teacher friend before schools closed. And then I haven't, seen her in person since to return it. But I read it. And it also, I think, first of all, it really lines up with some things that I really care about and think are important, but also I think it is really helpful in this time with all the craziness going on in the world. It's called Factfulness. I'll even hold it up so you guys can see it. Okay. It's called Factfulness. And the kind of the subtitle is 10 Reasons We're Wrong About the World and Why Things Are Better Than You Think, which I think is really needed right now, I think, with just the craziness and the way that we're feeling about things in the world. And it's really all, and this is one of the things I really like, it's really all based on actual data. So it's a global health researcher from Sweden who wrote the book with his son and daughter-in-law. And he goes through all of these different kind of misconceptions kind of about the way that we perceive the state of things in the world, and then offers actual data to compare and help you kind of rethink the way you think about things as far as global health in the world. So it's really well written. It's not just a bunch of really boring things. He's got lots of stories that he shares that are really engaging. He has pretty pictures and graphs in it. So I would recommend the book Factfulness.
Nice.
Oh, cool.
I think that's all we've got for this episode. So I would love it if all of you who are listening to us would follow us on social media. We are at Timwy Podcast. That's at TMWY Podcast for Take Me With You Podcast. We are on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. And hopefully Katie will share some pictures of real big trees with us, and we will post those on our social media.
All right. Will do.
You can also email us at timwepodcast@gmail.com. Send us your travel questions, your travel stories. Tell us about a theme of a trip that you have either gone on or wish you could go on.
You could also call us and leave us a voicemail at 406-763-8699 or alternately 406-POD-TIMWE. We would really appreciate it if you would rate and review our podcast, if you would subscribe to make sure you don't miss any of our episodes when they come out on Mondays, and share about this episode on social media so that other people can find out that you too can have a trip focused on trees.
As always, thank you to Beth Reed Miller for her awesome artwork. You can check out more of Beth's artwork at Beth Is Something. And thank you to Erica Corbin for the use of her song Round the Globe. You can listen to Erica's music wherever music is sold or streamed.
That's the end of this week's episode. Katie, thank you so much for sharing about your tree trip.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yay.
It was great.
Yay.
All right. Hopefully, we'll all be traveling again soon. And when you do, don't forget to take me with you.
Take me with you.
Can we get a sailboat chasing down the sunset as we float round and round the globe? Salty air and balmy nights, guided only by the lights above, and a little love. Oh, the world is out there waiting to explore, and all our troubles here wanting to be